Hey, buddy.
What's up?
Let's see. Where's my video?
Yeah,
Oh, here
where's
we
your
go.
face? There
Oh,
you are.
not that we want this one.
Oh, the side one. Okay.
Yeah. Oh shit. Hold on. Where's my druff?
Hey, welcome to the show. Nice to be back from a break. We're gonna talk about a little road trip I did with Alex Ansel. Funny guy from Texas originally. We took a trip to Texas, among other stops, and I got to ask him, and we talk about mainly going on the road, your first road trip shows, how you felt, how he felt, and when is a good time to take your act on the road. And let's get into this.
Sure. Oh, look at your background. Oh, you got a haircut and everything too, huh?
Well, gotta look good for Boo.
Yeah. I got your ears lowered. I see.
My ears.
Your ears lowered. It's another one. It's an old man way of saying something your grandpa would say if after getting a haircut. I got your ears lowered because of
Okay.
the hair. The
Okay,
hair
but
goes away and the ears get okay.
it makes sense now. Now that you explain
Okay.
it.
There we go. Yeah,
Go
let's go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead, do yourself. Oh man. Well, so first, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, least I could do.
Second, like your room looks pretty damn cool. It looks
Oh, thank
pretty
you, thank you.
dope.
Yeah,
Is
I do a lot of streaming and stuff from this little setup here, and hopefully start launching my little YouTube projects here and there, and be on the lookout for Ansel culture.
ooh.
So yeah, let's tackle some shit, and all the episodes I'll be in blackface and or a charcoal mask. That's what we're calling it because it'll be for the beauty tips. So that's how
Yeah,
we're
you're right.
skirting
It'd be
around
good for the
that.
skin, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Totally
I
get
got a
it.
lot of skin, so like for different chins, I'll have different layers of the masks
Oh,
and
so you got
get those
charcoal,
all.
limestone.
Yeah, it'll be the whole Grand Canyon. It'll be very for any geologist watching, they'll get a kick out of it.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, again, thanks for the show.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen episodes. Do you
yeah,
know what?
I've seen them on YouTube, and I subscribe to it on iTunes.
That's what I'm talking about. Everybody follow his lead.
Yeah,
Yeah. So let's get to it because I know you got LA Comedy Club at 6. So let's get
I
into
sure do.
this.
Yeah,
First question:
yes, sir.
You do comedy, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure, why not? Yeah, I do comedy. I guess I'd consider myself a comedian. I One thing I would always do or try to keep in mind because I have such a great respect of comedy. I didn't consider myself a comedian until I got my first like club gig with a paycheck. Until I
Oh,
got my first paycheck as a comedian from a comedy club, I was just like, yeah, I do comedy. And now that I've been, it's been more than 10 years of getting checks from comedy clubs. I'm like, yeah, I'm a comedian. So I'm a comedian that does comedy. Yes, sir.
oh, okay. That's an interesting take because I've heard people talk about
Yeah.
when do you call yourself a comedian. So
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
interesting take.
And also it's like, I don't know if it's like nitpicky or gatekeeping, but it's like, what do you put on your taxes? You know what I mean? I feel like if you're a cashier at somewhere and that's your main form of income, are you still a comedian? You know what? I just have such a great respect for stand up comedy and stand up comedians that it takes a lot to just make your solo living or if that's your solo income from it takes a lot of hustle grind and showing up to places and putting in that work to be able to be financially stable and be able to pay your bills through that primary source of income of doing comedy. But it's not to knock people that have day jobs and shit, but I feel like once you're able to quit that day job and just do fully comedy, be a comedian, then that's when you're, a true stand up comic and can list it as your profession. That's the way I look at it. Yeah, there's other people out there that are like, I make people laugh and I'm a comedian. And it's like, no, you have an Instagram account. There's a big difference. All right, not every chick with a phone is a goddamn model.
True, true. That's a
So,
good way to look at it. It's a good way to
oh,
distinguish it. I like it. All
thank you.
right. So you mentioned you've been doing it for 10 years. I
Yeah,
like
10
to
plus
ask,
years. Yeah.
like how you got started. Like what made you decide, let me do comedy and then tell me about the first time you did it, your experience and everything.
Oh, for sure. Well, I've always had a great respect and love of comedy, and I was the type of kid I always had Comedy Central on in the background when I was doing homework, and or I would just be in my room and I'd play this again. My dad was a electronics department manager, and so I at one point I had like two or three TVs in my room, and it almost looked like one of those hacker rooms that you'd see in old movies because I'd have a couple screens in a room, and one would be hooked up to the Nintendo 64, one would be hooked up to a PlayStation, the other's hooked up to TV. So I'd have one on Comedy Central, one on, playing a wrestling video game. Um, I was, growing up big. I was always, one of the biggest, if not the biggest kid in class wherever I went. So I kind of used humor as my defense mechanism. And uh, I always loved making people laugh, and I got tired of people telling me I should do stand-up comedy. And my first kind of like dipping my toe in the water of doing comedy was Last Comic Standing came through San Antonio. This is probably like '06, and I tried to go to it, but I didn't know at the time. Oh no, you had to be an established comic. I just went in there like, green as snake shit, thinking, oh, I could just waltz in and try out for Last Comic Standing. No, that's not the way it worked. And then I kind of looked into how do I start comedy? Well, go to open mics. So I went to the club show down in San Antonio at the River Center Comedy Club and watched some of the free showcases that they had there. They had a midnight showcase, and kind of talked to the comics, and I was like, hey, how do I do this? And they told me, go to an open mic. And I did my first open mic in September of 2007. And I actually did two open mics in one night. I did a 5 p.m. open mic at my home club, the River Center Comedy Club, and then I did a 9 p.m. show in Austin, which is about an hour and a half away. And I just kind of, stood there, read my jokes off an index card. And I had enough sense that I knew I was a fan of comedy enough to know that comedians would do multiple shows a night. And I thought, all right, if I'm going to try this comedy thing, I'm going to do, two open mics in one night. And this is like my, toss me in the deep end type stuff. And did okay in San Antonio. The other comics there were pretty receptive. I was getting pointers, and they told me to come back next week, and they showed me where the other open mics are. This is back in like MySpace day. And then in Austin, they weren't as welcoming, and they were kind of like shitty towards me, and they're like, who the fuck is this guy? And I didn't get the same, you know, in San Antonio, it's just like, oh yeah, come on, yeah, let's do this. And in Austin, I was like, who are you? What are you doing here? You don't belong here. It was a real like Mean Girls vibe. And every once in a while, and then even some of them trashed me on MySpace online, which I thought was dumb. Why would you trash someone after they try something for the first time?
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I remember the main person. I look him up and I see what he's doing, and he's not doing comedy anymore. And I still am, motherfucker. I'm over here in Vegas doing shows on the strip, bitch.
Nice, nice.
So yeah, yeah.
Okay, so all right, so the first San Antonio mic went well. Do you remember any? Do you remember one of those jokes at all?
I do. I think I did well, one of the jokes I still actually do. It's like, why are they calling me Kool-Aid? I don't call myself Kool-Aid because I want little kids to like me. I call myself Kool-Aid because I want little black kids to like me.
Oh, okay, so
Uh
that's from the original.
yeah, that,
Ah,
and
okay.
I did another one where it's like, what's the difference between a special ed kid and a skateboarder? A special ed kid is smart enough to wear a helmet. That was another one. And then just a couple like, kind of like very derivative, kind of like, oh, that's kind of like a Diet Coke version of this joke, or oh, hey, that's like a great value version of that joke, and a lot of that stuff was kind of derivative, and so is everyone when they first start out, and then through the years and whatnot, you kind of find your own voice, and the more comedy you watch, you're like, oh, they do something similar. Let me make mine more unique, or let me just drop it all together. Let me do something else. So yeah, I mean, it's not like my first time there. I fucking crushed it, killed it. What's up? Where's my shot? No, I just went, that was okay, and I'm one of these people. I don't really get nervous in front of crowds. I'm super comfortable talking to people. I did retail sales for 10 years before I did comedy. And so I had no problem like approaching people or being looked at. And when you're my size and I've always been big, I've always been looked at and stared at. And now performing, it's like, well, let me give you something to look at. Let me give you a reason to look. That's the way I kind of look at it.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. Did you go back the next week after your open mic, or did you like wait a little bit?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I remember going back and just making friends with the comics and the guys that I started out with around then, and going to other shows and independent shows and shows at different like restaurants and open mics at different bars. And I even remember, I think I was a year into doing comedy before somebody told me, "Hey, you can watch the shows at the comedy club for free because you're doing the open mics and you're doing this and that." And I was like, what? Because before I was like, I don't have 15 bucks to, I barely had money to buy like a beer. I'd get like a soda and then tip a couple bucks, but I don't really have the money to like pay for tickets and shit. And like I said, that's when they went, yeah, you could just like go in and go see the show, talk to the manager. And I remember that being like, oh shit, hell yeah. So that would become a part of the routine would be Friday nights. You'd go do the 5 p.m. open mic, stick around, watch the first show, and then after that, go see if there's another independent show or go hang out with some comics elsewhere and go write somewhere. Um, but yeah, that was way back in like 07, 08, 09. And then I did my first comedy competition in 2010. That was sponsored by the club. And at this point, the comedy club in San Antonio opened a second location. They opened the Laugh Out Loud Comedy Club, this big warehouse of a building, kind of closer to the airport, and entered that and did did really well and ended up winning that competition. And it felt pretty good to think of like, oh, cool, my first comedy competition I won. Because I remember the night of the finals, my dad asked me, he goes, oh, hey, how long are you going to keep doing this comedy thing? Because apparently I have a history of like, oh, let me see. I always have great ideas and great intentions. And I'm like, I want to do this and this and that. And then follow through is kind of like one of my um, weak points. But I just remember telling my dad, you know what? I really have fun doing comedy and I'm going to keep doing it and see what happens and see where it takes me. And then that night ended up winning, $500 check and a giant trophy. And then I started getting offers for all kinds of other gigs. And I was smart enough to know how much time I had because I won the competition with like 7 minutes. And then I was getting offers to headline, and I was like, I don't have that much time. And I'm glad I had enough sense to be like, oh, hey, I can probably do 2025, but I don't have a full 45 to an hour. And then I found out when I went to some of these places and I did my 2025, they go, what the fuck, man? You could do an hour. You're great. You should, when you come back, you're going to do longer. I was like, okay. But, I rather sell myself short and over deliver than oversell myself and then shortchange you.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of doing anything. Like you don't want to say, yeah, I'll headline, do an hour, and then you're like, there goes my 12 minutes. So that's good.
Yeah. Just like,
That's
should I
good.
start my set over?
Did you get the first joke? Yeah.
Yeah. In my notes, people laughed longer. So eat up that time.
That's cool. That's cool. So your first competition, like 3 years into comedy, then
Yeah.
that was the
And
first competition.
and really like the first 2 years of me doing comedy, I didn't really take it too seriously. It was like for me, I kind of looked at it as like a social thing, and for some of that time, I didn't show up consistently, and I was going through some stuff in life and doing a lot of drinking, and then I kept getting encouraged by the guys that I started out with. There's a guy named Javier Balzadua. He's still out there in San Antonio, my good buddy, and he's like, "Hey, when are you coming back out? You're funny." Da da da. And then I got an offer to do this one promoter just always loved me and stayed in touch with me. And he goes, hey, I got this offer at this new venue and they want to do a weekly comedy show. And you're the first person I thought of. And I was like, well, I really haven't done it in a while. And that kind of like forced me to kind of like shake the rust off and get back into it. And it was actually when I was kind of prepping for those shows, I was doing the comedy club open mic and I did well during one of the Fridays. And the manager approached me and he goes, hey, he goes, we don't have an MC tonight. Do you want to do it? And I regrettably went, oh no, there's no way I'm ready for it. There's no way I'm ready for it. And one of the old heads, and I mentioned his name on the trip we were just on, Tommy Munoz. Tommy Munoz goes, you say yes to every gig. In the beginning, you say yes to every stage opportunity because if you fuck up, it's their fault for booking you. And that just like that was like a mind-blowing moment. So ever since then, um, you know, uh, you want to say yes to every gig, and then, a couple years down the line, you'll be able to when you can start saying no to gigs. That's another like power trip of like, no, this one's, not my time, not my energy, or I know what I'm worth, or things like that. So when you can start saying no to gigs, which I've been able to do here and there. I mean, I still don't say no to a lot of gigs, but that's like another like I think a milestone.
Yeah, that's cool. That's I was kind of thinking that like at what point can you start saying no? Because you definitely, I mean, you don't want to like pass up even like me for me it's especially like any guest spot. Like, all right, I'll take it. You
Mhm.
know, it's probably 5 6 minutes just like an open mic, but at least it's
Yeah.
more eyes. You know.
And yeah, where you're at, you want to go for the experience. It's like, hey, you're what, less than 2 years in, and you already done shows in Texas, and you already done shows in Arizona, you already done shows what in Utah and California. And that's a lot for somebody under 2 years to get those many states underneath your belt.
Yeah.
And now and then you have different experiences and things to draw from, and you kind of get a better idea of like, oh, this is what it's going to be like on the road, and plus you get the camaraderie of hanging out with other comics and then watching comics that you've seen a bunch before. Like this last weekend when we were hanging out traveling across the country. You've seen me before, you've seen Adam before, Adam Dominguez, previous guest, and then you got to see how we work in a different environment, and I'm sure you saw some of the differences, or saw how we handle certain things, and that just kind of goes along with it.
Yeah. No, very true. I did notice because we saw Stephen Briggs. We saw
Exactly.
Kabir. Kabir was my first time, so I don't really have much experience. But I saw, Steven, and I've seen him at a backstop.
Yeah.
I've seen him at the Don't Tell shows, and I've seen you multiple times. Like I said, I've seen Adam multiple times. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Different every now and then. The energy's a little bit different. The feel in the crowd, whatever. The rough nights, who cares? Whatever it is, it's a little bit different. But then you notice, like, all right, you're in it now. You're really in it, cooking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the main topic I want to talk about for this show is because I just went through it. Was the road trip.
Uh-huh.
You know? We went to Colorado. We went to Arizona. We went to Texas. And
Uh-huh.
it's like in 4 or 5 days, driving 12, 14 hours
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
days. We got back like at 2 in the morning, and I went to work at 5.
Oh Jesus. I've had had shows like that where I think one time I drove from San Antonio to Houston, which is about three and a half. Well, it was outside of Houston on the other side, so it was about 4 hours each way. And I think I had like walking pneumonia,
Mm.
so I finished teaching a defensive driving safety class. I was done by 4 p.m. I hit the road, and I did the show in Houston at 9. Hit the road in Houston at like probably 11 or midnight, drove another 4 hours back, got, 3 hours of sleep, all while just, phlegming everywhere. I mean, I had like thick, membraney mucus coming out, coughing like a jackass, driving 4 hours each way, and then, sleeping 2 or 3 hours, and then having to teach again the next day. And I was like, after that, I was just like, all right, this was dumb. But, once you say yes to the gig, and you don't want to cancel, and especially if you're getting booked by someone the first time and
Yeah.
then you cancel, and it's like, ugh, it's one thing if you've built up a rapport and a relationship and just like, oh, hey, I can't make it, I'm sick. Then and then they're like, oh yeah, no worries. But yeah, there's been plenty of times where you just fly into crazy places late at night, and then you line something up. But I think throughout the experience, I think we both learned, oh hey, give us a little, day off buffer zone
Yeah. No.
before going back, because I know when I got back, literally stayed in bed for I think 12, 18 hours straight. I think I only left to go pee and get water.
Yeah. Lucky. I went to
Oh,
work. I slept for like those 2 3 hours. Went to work.
yeah.
Came home. I took a nap for an hour, and then I went to the mic. Like
Yeah, and I know like you and a couple other cats that I've been on the road with, where it's like when we get back, the first thing they want to do is like do another open mic, just so that all the other open micers are like, so how was it? How, you have the smell of the road on you, And, and I've been there too, or, you feel like a big shot. You're like, yeah, I was in El Paso last night. It was pretty sweet. It's pretty cool seeing, doing comedy in different places. And, so I get it. But, now it's just like,
Yeah,
it sucks when you get used to it and you're just like, that's part of the
yeah,
job,
yeah. I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of cool when people kept asking me, like, yeah,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. I no, I truthfully, I didn't go just for that feeling. That kind of escaped me. But it was cool. It was really cool. People were like, oh, how was the show? And I got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Being on the road with you guys, I can't really talk to you guys about it because we were all there.
Yeah.
I can't be like, hey, did you guys see me? Of course you saw me. You were there. Yeah. But
Yeah.
tell me, like, because this was like my real first road trip experience, you know.
Yeah.
So tell me about yours. The first time you went on a little tour or whatever with you or you or with a couple people. I don't know what your experience was.
Yeah. So I've done like touring, and that's a whole new eye-opening experience of when you're on the road like 2 weeks straight, and doing like 11 gigs and 14 nights in 10 different cities. And so I've done that. But my first road trip for comedy was I was probably doing comedy 4 or 5 months, and I got booked to do, like less than 10 minutes in a showcase in Corpus Christi, Texas, which is about 2.5 hours from San Antonio. And my dad was excited. My dad was the driver. So my dad drove us down there. We went and got some food at Chili's right around the corner from the venue. And we did the show there. And I got paid $25, which, barely, it covered gas for, going back and forth. And, I wanted to give it to my dad, and my dad was like, "No, keep it. That's your comedy money." And my dad was more than happy to kind of support and drive me back and forth. Then we drove back that night, and yeah, got back home. But yeah, that was my first like road gig, was Corpus Christi, Texas, home of Selena, home of Whataburger. So that was pretty fun. And then as far as like kind of solo touring, probably like doing, 3, 4 shows in a weekend, like leaving on a Wednesday, coming back on a Sunday, just hitting like different stops in Texas. 2, 3 years ago, I did 7 shows and 7 nights in Texas. Me and my buddies, Anthony Chavarria and John Tuttle, and we were crisscrossing all across the state, south, northeast, west, going all over the damn place doing shows. And but really, it's those big long tours that I did when I opened for Jake the Snake Roberts, a retired WWF pro wrestler. And those, we'd be at home for a while. It's like, oh, we're itching. Let's get back on the road. And then sure enough, 4 or 5, nights into it, we're like, why did we say yes to this? I want to be back home. I want to sleep in my own bed. Cause you gotta imagine, you get to a town, you check into the hotel room. Probably shit, shower, and shave, grab something to eat, head to the venue, start setting up the merch table, sell some stuff before the show. And at times it would just be Jake and I. So I'd be the one driving, checking in, having to search of like what restaurant he wants to go to, if he wants steak, if he wants sushi. Then I'd handle all the paperwork and getting the check from the venue at the end of the night. Sometimes we'd be doing venues that were bars, and they don't do a lot of comedy. So I'd have to take the staff aside and take the manager aside. Hey, no drinks in the blender tonight. Keep your voices low. We're turning off all the TVs. We're gonna work on the lighting. No colored lighting on the stage. Let's move the tables in a certain way. So you'd have to basically turn. And that's just experience I had from producing shows and bars on my own. And I was able to kind of bring that experience on the road when we would go to these kind of like smaller hole in the wall places. And you kind of, I don't want to say you have to act like bad cop, but you kind of have to act like a manager and just go, well, I don't care if they don't like me after this. We want to make sure that everybody has a good show so that the people that visit the venue will come back for another show. And they all understood that. It's not like I snapped at anybody, yelled at anybody. It was just like, hey, let's make this the best experience possible. Then and then on top of all that, I'd have to do my 25 to 35 minutes on stage, bring up Jake, and then while he was on stage, I'd go double check with the merch table and get stuff ready for when he gets off a stage, so I could be at the table and take photos and take money and try to sell my stuff as well. and then pack everything up. And if we get something to eat afterwards, we do that, or just go to the hotel room. And Jake was an early riser, and we'd wake up at 7 a.m. usually the next day, and do it all over again. And we'd probably be only like 4 or 5 hours in between gigs, just because Jake couldn't be in the car that long. But again, I think at one point we did one tour, and it was like Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, and I kept the hotel key from every show. And after like 2 weeks, I had like 11 different room keys, and did like a little video. And I was like, oh, this is the stuff you dream about. So yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. You were doing a lot on that tour then. You weren't just doing comedy. You were doing manager work, like you said, merch
Right.
stage. Like
Yeah.
you were a one man band for that
Yeah,
whole
lackey
band.
stuff. And then checking in with the home base of like, hey, we're low on this, send more of this. Or hey, go pick up more headshots at this FedEx store, because that's where we had it shipped to.
Yeah.
Or oh, we're out of the paint markers, to sign shit, so you have to go and make sure to get more of those, the markers. And then um yeah, so it's more than just like, oh, let me go from city to city and tell jokes, especially if you're basically caretaking, or being someone's what do they call it? I always think of it like CIA, if you're being someone's handler.
Yeah.
And then with Jake especially too, he would do conventions on the weekends, right? So during the day, we'd be at these conventions selling stuff, talking to people, taking photos, and then we'd wrap at 5 just to do a show at 8, you know, in the same city at another venue that could be 5 minutes away, or half an hour away, or longer. But versus if I'm, when I did the 7 shows in 7 nights, I was kind of like headlining the tour, and it was just like, all right, let's get to the next hotel, chill, and then do the show, and then repeat the next day.
Right. And I mean that's a good point because I really didn't know what to expect. I knew we were going to go driving. We're gonna
Yeah,
do comedy.
yeah.
But and
Oh,
that's
then we
good.
also did press too. When I was with Jake, we do radio interviews, and then I'd have to schedule phone interviews, and all this kind of stuff while I was driving. And I'd have to do all the driving because Jake has pins in his neck, so he can't be driving, moving his neck around. So,
Right.
but yeah, you were saying?
Yeah, so I didn't really know what to expect. I just knew we were driving, we're doing shows. And then like, you at the last minute you jump onto the trip with us, and then you bring your cameras, and then
Yeah,
you started filming and taking photos at the different shows, even the ones that you weren't performing in. And then that was kind of a little eye opener too. Like, oh, okay, you can do
yeah,
just comedy or you can do extra, you
yeah.
know,
Well,
supplemental.
yeah, we all realize, especially in this day and age, we're basically all our own networks. We're all our own broadcast networks, and we can't look for somebody. You can't be on somebody else's camera. You have to be in front of yours.
Yeah.
And and again, I want to make, if there's anything I could do to help somebody else out that won't cost me too much time or money or whatever, I'm more than happy to do it, because I know that it might come back to me, it might not. I don't That's not why I do it, but it's like, I got a badass camera. Why not take some photos of the show to get some, headshots for newer comics, or comics that can't afford to get their own headshots. But I'm like, here, I took a couple shots. And then sometimes they're like, hey, how can I, or, and I'm like, how can they repay me or whatever? I'm like, if you got a couple bucks, Venmo me some money, or put in a good word for me, or tell them not to worry about it. And for the most part, it's been working out pretty well. So and then plus, you never know what's going to happen on stage. You want to record every set. And we were at that roast battle show, and there's that lady that was getting roasted for heckling the show, and then later on she ended up in the parking lot. I didn't record that. I thought that'd be too crass. But
Maybe.
I was like, I have my, because at the end of the night, I want to be able to chill and not have to worry where all my equipment's at and all that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
yeah,
Right. No, definitely. I mean, it was I mean, it's cool or it's eye opening knowing that there's that, like hopefully in a few years or whatever, I go on doing shows and stuff, feature headliner, maybe, whatever.
yeah,
And it was cool seeing all this stuff. Like
See you there.
Okay. Maybe I should have my own equipment to film myself because you're right.
Yeah,
I might have a great set that night. It could be something amazing, and I can use that in the future when someone's like, "Hey, do you have a video, a
yeah,
tape of yourself?" Like, here you go.
yeah.
You don't want to miss out on something great because you didn't feel like recording.
Plus, you also want to try to upload, even if you don't publish the videos, upload everything to YouTube just to keep a backup. And then two, if there's a joke that you've written that's that you came up with it, it's your idea, and you have a video of it and you uploaded it, 3 years ago. Now there's a new guy you doing that same joke. You can go, actually, I've been doing it for 3 years, and then publish the video and go, well, it was uploaded on this day. Here it is, and then boom, that takes out
Yeah,
any kind of I don't want to say blowback, but it just puts the odds in your favor and you have evidence and whatnot. Because like I do that ranch bit of like, oh, a server came up to me and brought me ranch without asking. And then there's a guy out of LA who does something similar. It's a similar setup, but I have a different punchline. And I feel like mine's different enough, and I know I didn't take it, and I have video of me doing it from 3-4 years ago, so I'm not like too worried about it. If somebody
yeah,
brings it up, I go, mine's different enough, and here's proof that I've been doing it, this long and whatnot. So
yeah. That is a good tip because it had crossed my mind because you're right at the beginning. You mentioned like you'll see people do jokes and you're like, oh, that's kind of like mine or similar or whatever.
yeah,
That's actually a good tip. Upload everything just in case, just
same
in
thing,
case.
and you can kind of do it with tweets too, but there's, with so many comics out there and so many content creators, everybody has their hot take. And if you're doing topical stuff, it's easy to kind of overlap and do the same kind of things. So, if there's any advice I could give is just like, right from your point of view, right from the well that is Johnny Castillo, because nobody else is Johnny Castillo, only you are.
It's true, except
So
some other Johnny Castillo. And
yeah, I mean that is a pretty common name.
yeah, but I know I get what you're saying. Yeah, definitely write what you know, what you experience. Don't copy someone else. You know? So talking about your road gigs though, when did you feel comfortable enough to like let me go on an actual road gig, an actual 3, 4, or a 2 week trip? Like when did you feel like I'm at this level?
um okay, well, I'll give you I'll tell you what. I'll tell you this version, or I think what this is what I think you mean. This is when I felt comfortable being on the road was when I would go to faraway places and I would be worried about if my jokes would work. I that was like something I had in the back of my mind because when I started touring, opening for Jake, we went nationwide, and I didn't, I came up in Texas, and I don't think I left the state of Texas for a gig until I was like 4 or 5 years in, because Texas is just huge as shit. You go
Yeah,
in San Antonio, you go 4 hours in any direction, you're still in fucking Texas. So out here in Vegas, you go 4 hours in any direction, you could be in LA, Salt Lake City, or Phoenix. Uh, but one of the things in the back of my head was like, "Hey, are my Texas jokes gonna work in New York? Hey, are my Texas jokes gonna work in Seattle? Hey, is the jokes about me and this and all that, my references about Hispanics, Mexican culture, is that stuff gonna work in Canada?" When I found out that my stuff worked everywhere and I was even getting better responses than I would back home, then I was like, "Yo, okay, I'm on to something." Because even the first time I visited Vegas, I did some shows out here, and I was like, let's see how my stuff travels. Let's see how it works in Vegas. And I did a couple guest sets and just got great responses. And I was like, okay, you know what? If I move to Vegas, I think I'd do okay out here. And then sure enough, I got asked to move in with Jake the Snake in Vegas a couple of years ago. And that's another trip, when somebody used to watch on TV asks you to move in with them. And one of my friends kind of compares it to, he goes, dude, you got Jake the Snake and DDP helping you out with your biggest problem, losing weight. And my buddy Alonzo goes, that'd be like if Han Solo and Spider-Man asked me to move into the Millennium Falcon to help me kick alcoholism. That's what that feels like. I was like, oh, that's a good way of putting it. So I think that kind of goes along with what you were kind of getting at. It's like, oh, will my stuff work? and then finding out that it did and it still does. And I'm like, okay, good. Cause I was like, yo, are they going to get my queso joke out here in Canada? Do they know what queso is? And sure enough, my first show in Canada, which means I'm an international comedian now. There was a billboard for a Qdoba, and it said queso, 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 and it was advertising the 3 different queso dips they had, and that was on a bus stop ad right outside of the hotel room we were at in Canada. And I was like, okay, I think they're gonna
It'll
get
work. Yeah,
this.
it'll work. Yeah.
And then it ended up working out great, and had a fun time in Canada, and definitely want to go back there.
Yeah, it looks cool. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you went in depth with the question, which is cool. I was gonna follow up,
Yeah.
but I think what I really wanted to get at is like, when did you feel comfortable enough to try it? Like, what was the thing that's like, I feel confident enough in these jokes. Let me take them out of here. Let me take them out of my hometown. Let me.
I think it was just like, just getting booked. If somebody
Okay.
says, "Hey, you want to do a show in Dallas?" You go, "Yeah, I want to do a show in Dallas. I want to see how my stuff works out there." And I've never, if I'm tagging along with somebody, or I've always been kind of gung ho of like, all right, let's try this out. I think the bigger challenge, or where I kind of had some trepidation or whatever, is if you're like the headliner and you're going to a spot you've never been to before, and you don't know, are they going to have local comics? Are they going to suck? Are they going to bomb? And then you kind of have to save the show. You have to be the reason why people pay their $10 to get their money's worth. And that is the challenge. And I don't think a lot of people think about that when they think of comedy. It's like, yo, man, I'm like SEAL Team 6, man. They dropped me in the middle of nowhere in some bumfuck bar in the middle of nowhere, in front of all these people I've never bet before, and I better be fucking funny. So,
Yeah, no.
so they're happy. And then what happens 9 times out of 10, you go to these little places, and they treat you like a rock star. You're like, man, I can't believe you're doing something like this in our tiny little town. Thank you so much. And then you don't pay for a drink that night. Um, so I think that's one thing people don't understand, and that's the challenge I look forward to now is like, yo, where we're going tonight? Put me in, coach. I got this.
That's awesome. Okay, so for you, then, my understanding is for you is when somebody was believed enough in you to book you, and that was like, all
Yeah.
right, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Someone says I'm ready, I'm ready.
Again, it's going back to what my buddy Tommy Munoz said. If somebody asks you to do a show, you get the opportunity, say yes. And then if you fuck up, it was their fault for booking you. Then they can be like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe you weren't ready for this, or oh my God, you did great. We want to have you back. That's the ultimate goal. So
That's good because I know I have Ryan in the past, and one of his tip was like, just ask. Ask to
yeah,
be on as many shows as you can get on. And I've had other people who's like, well, who said I'm waiting for someone to reach out to me because I want to make sure I'm good enough. You
yeah.
know,
Yeah, I'd say little column A, little column B. Um, sometimes people that ask a lot, it's good. Like was it squeaky wheel gets the grease?
yeah,
But I'm the type of person where I always think of like, let me offer you something versus like, oh, okay, okay. Like one, I like if somebody's eager, but I also like it if, like, for example, if you came along with Adam to a show I was booking, and I could be like, hey, I got extra 5. You want to do it? Versus, and then, I mean, because, you get people all the time, especially someone who's booked shows. I like to go out and find the talent I want on the show and then book it the way I want to. And then sure enough, still get people that are like, they show up on the day of asking for a guest spot and things like that. And you're like, like, ah.
yeah,
So you got to make special, caveats, or see what you could do there. And that's just, I like to book in a prepared way. So I think it's all about like, towing that line. And if it's a booker that that you've worked with before, then sure, yeah, ask away. If it's somebody you don't know, and you could try to cold call them, or be like, hey, I'm gonna be in town. Can I would open up with, hey, can I swing by and check out the show? And then once you get there, like, hey, is there any time?
yeah,
I'm down to do it. But I've learned from other comics, when you're at a comedy club, one, always be ready, be in your show clothes. Don't show up at the comedy club wearing shorts and flip flops, because you might be thrown up on stage. It's happened to me before. I was hanging out doing door guy stuff, or hanging out, just, selling weed to the wait staff. And they're like, oh, hey, so and so didn't show up. We're going to throw you on stage. All right.
That's a good tip. That's another good tip. I know
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just like, I'm just bumming, but that's a good thing to keep in mind. Like, always be prepared because you never know.
Yeah.
Never
Absolutely.
know.
And you can have make or break moments. And I remember one night Ralphie May was showing up late, and the manager Jeff, English guy, uh, Ralphie was telling him, "Oh, push the show half an hour," and Jeff was like, "No, we start on time here." And so Jeff came up to me and he's like, Alex, do you want to go on stage tonight? And I was like, and it was sold out, 400 people in the room. And I was like, hell yeah. So I went in the green room bathroom. I splashed water on my face like an 8 Mile moment, and I had my show shirt in my backpack, and I threw on my show t-shirt, and texted my sister like, I'm going to open for Ralphie May. It's a sold out crowd. And I ended up doing 30 minutes and had a great set. Brought up his openers, and I got a lot of good response from his fans that night. And some people were posting, like, "Oh my god, you did better than Ralphie," and I was like, "Don't fucking tag him in it. Don't show him this." But he made light of it too. When when he went up on stage, he was like, "Hey, did y'all see Bizarro me up here?"
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You never know when you're gonna be on stage next. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously you're headliner. You traveled international comic, as you said. People know you around here, town and everything. You got a big following in Texas. I picked up on that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So you've been successful up till now, but I want to know the
Until
real
now.
because I want to know the real answer. So I want to hear of your worst road show ever, because we all know it happens. It's gonna happen
Yeah.
whether big or little. So
Uh,
I mean, you're a great guy. I'm not
yeah,
dishing.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
had your
Okay.
great moments, but I like to hear it sometimes. Like, well, there was one time.
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where you show up to the show and then the promoter's like, "Hey, we're gonna have to cancel." And I'm like, "Yo, I drove 4 hours to be here. What the fuck you mean this is canceled?" Or, where the turnout is low, or I'm trying to think of the last time where I always try to make the best out of any situation. And I think it's something I do in my own head where even if I'm working, like recently working with a new promoter or working at a new venue or somewhere where they don't do comedy, and it's just like, oh, let's see what kind of shit show it's going to be. And then it's one of those things is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. And luckily I've been able to kind of pull some of those stops out. But there's been there's not one that really comes to my mind. I mean, sure, there's been shows with low turnout, but you just kind of mess with that and you address it, and you kind of do some crowd worky stuff, or you make fun of
Yeah.
of was everybody else in a warrant roundup? What happened?
Uh,
Uh
I mean,
yeah.
that's cool. I mean, that speaks to the caliber of a comedian. Like because I've seen some shows where like they're pretty bad. Like, but to be like in the mentality like, "Oh, I'm gonna make the best out of it,"
Yeah.
and then you just flip it, and you're like, you know what? It was pretty bad until he got up there, and he somehow made magic out of only me and one other person in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Yeah, nothing really. And you know what's going to happen as soon as we're done with this? I'm like, oh, there was this one time where this and this and that and that. Or sometimes the promoter doesn't have all the money, and that's another thing too. If you do a show and there's low turnout, and the promoter's like, we can only give you this much. Work with them the first time. But if they keep doing it, then you stop working with them. There was one time I worked with a promoter in San Antonio. They shorted me, and I was like, you know what? I get it. It's not like I don't see them walking off with money bags while here I am scraping by. But a comic I was on the show with, they shorted him $10, and he lost his shit. He went off on them in person, online, on Facebook, and they never worked with him again. And I kept working with that duo, and I think 2 or 3 shows later, they gave me a bonus of $100 just because they're like, "Hey, that's to make up for that one show and for being cool and this and that." And I was like, "Oh, cool, thanks." Like
Yeah. No,
so.
that's awesome. That's good because
Yeah,
you're right. Like I can understand it too. Like there's only two people that show up for a show.
yeah,
They're not gonna make money. They're probably gonna lose money. And then, like you mentioned, you got to keep networking, being social.
yeah,
You got to work as one. If you're not gonna get booked if you're like that guy flipping out over $10. Like
Yeah.
it's ten
And then
bucks.
when I would book shows and run shows, produce shows, I always had the money for the performers, like in envelopes, and I would pay them before the show. I would treat performers the way I'd want to be treated. So if I show up to your venue and the first thing you do is give me the money for it, I'm gonna be like, all right, I gotta earn this. The pressure's on me now,
Mhm.
you know? Because do you know what? I did a college gig one time and I bombed my fucking tits off. Like just did horribly. And it was like at a black college. And I was making fun of how I was doing stripper jokes, and then these group of guys were like laughing around this girl pointing at her. And then me, like an idiot, go, "Oh, okay. Are you a stripper?" And then she just kind of like shut down. And I just went, "Oh, yeah, that was probably bad in hindsight." And then you kind of feel guilty getting paid at the end of the night. You're like, "Yeah, I need this for my phone bill." So, there was a part of me that was like, "You can't ask for money after that." But you kind of have to. You were booked, you did and I did my time. That's the other thing is do your goddamn time that you're, booked for. And then that way nobody can quibble about if you should get paid or not. So,
All right, definitely. Keep that in mind. Do not call out strippers at a college.
well, it was pretty early in my experience where I think my reading of the crowd and the situation wasn't, where it is now, obviously.
Really,
And yeah, where I Kool-Aid now would have handled that a lot differently than the Kool-Aid back then.
I mean, I'm
So,
playing the scenario in my head, and I think I probably would have done the similar thing if I was
yeah,
doing stripper jokes at a college, and then there's some girl, and I'm like, there, that's the one. But you're right. I probably would have done the same thing until I got the experience. So
yeah, absolutely.
well, that's
That's
cool.
it.
Was
Yeah,
that at
that's the other thing too
colleges?
is like we're reading crowds of people, nanoseconds, we're reading a room of 30, a room of 50, a room of 100 100 people. We're constantly reading their reactions back and forth. So, it sharpens your skills so that when you meet one person, or you're even doing crowd work with someone, you can pick up on a lot of stuff of how they're dressed, what they're wearing, what kind of watch they have or shoes they have, and you can kind of like, uh, you know, uh, go from there from picking up those almost like Sherlock-esque visual cues.
I,
Because again, we're doing this nanoseconds at a time when we're on stage, so that when you focus it on one person, you can just break down a person like that much easier.
yeah, no, I definitely agree. I know I noticed that this Sunday on the show because I remember the first time when I noticed like trying to just trying to do a joke, but at the same time trying to like watch an audience and then trying to process that. I was kind of like overloaded at the first. I'm like, wait, what joke was I on? Like,
Yeah,
and then like there was a comment some lady made, and it was pretty impressive that like, oh, I said something funny like that quick, where I didn't have to think about it.
yeah,
I didn't have to think. I didn't have to like stand there thinking like, what joke was I gonna do next?
yeah, yeah. And me, I'm bad about like it depends. It depends on what rhythm I'm in, but sometimes somebody will say something or they'll and it messes up either my timing or I go off on a tangent and then it's like, wait, where was I before? And then my set just looks like a total ADD thing of like, oh, everything worked well. Like when we were in Phoenix. That's the way I felt about my set in Phoenix. Like the jokes hit. I got great responses, got good laughs, but my only regret was the order of the jokes that I did, like what order they were in.
Yeah.
If I could change that, then I'd be 100% happy with the set. But probably where I'm at now is probably like 85% happy. So,
I mean, and I really couldn't tell. And I've seen you, and I've seen those jokes plenty of times. I think there was only one joke where I'm like, well, that's a little different than usual. But for the most part, I couldn't really tell, And I
yeah,
think that's the a big thing. You gotta sell your presence. They don't know your jokes. They
yeah,
haven't seen you every single night.
exactly,
It doesn't
exactly.
matter what order you do your jokes. Only you know that.
Yeah,
So to be able to do that and then still give off that confidence, like, no, that's how it was supposed to go.
yeah.
So you're back at the hotel and you're telling me like, man, that shit sucked. You know?
Oh, that when I would tour with Jake and his daughter was like, she would kind of road manage us on stuff. So it usually be the three of us, and then if she wasn't on the road, I kind of take over some of her stuff on the road. But I would have, she thought it was a killer set of like applause breaks and cheers and extended laughs. And I'm just like, oh, I messed up that one joke here. And it's good to be your own harshest critic. You have to be. And because I never want to be satisfied. There's some nights where few and far between where I'm like, yo, that shit was like a movie. Everything clicked, everything. I didn't want to get off stage. And there's probably like a handful or maybe 10 times that I can remember thinking that. But the rest is like, it's like those are the sets I want to keep doing week after week or night after night
Yeah.
after night is like, let me get to that perfect level and then see, how can I go even higher? How can I make it better?
Yeah, you want to keep chasing that high.
Yeah,
Um,
you're chasing that dragon. I
yeah.
remember that first set I had where I just, fucking remember killing it. And then when the host was like, give it up for Kool-Aid, and I was walking off stage, the crowd erupting, and I was just like, oh, that felt good. Cause I followed an Austin comic who ate shit. And before he went on stage, he was like, yeah, they're gonna have to get the ambulances ready in here because I'm about to kill this shit. And I'm just like, okay. And then he went up there and just fucking ate a bag of dicks. And then I went up after him and just murked it out. Just like, and I have the audio recording of that set. I don't have the video, but I'll listen to it every now and then just to hear those cheers. And I'm like, yo, your boy did it. Your boy was on fire that night.
Awesome. Yeah, I gotta do more audio recordings at least because you're right.
Yeah.
I don't like
Video,
this.
yeah,
I
definitely
don't like.
record video because you don't know what facial expressions you're doing or what physical things. Because Tom Rhodes taught this to me. It was like, tell the joke, show the joke, tell the joke, show the joke. And that
Yeah.
kind of doubles your stage time. And that sometimes you can, like you saw me in Arizona, I was kind of going way slower than I usually do. Usually I'm kind of like, ba, 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 I like to speed bag it, but in Arizona, I just kind of took my time and let every laugh kind of, die down until I started the next joke. Um, so yeah, those are the like the later meta games you can kind of play once, I don't want to say once you get bored of your set, but once you know your set, then you can start playing with what order you put them in, what transitions, what segues, what little tweaks and things you could do again with like maybe an eyebrow raise, or me, I'll bulge out my eyes, or I make my cute baby face, you know.
All right.
Uh,
All right. All right. So we're running out of time here. I don't want to keep you too long.
yeah.
I got two more questions. First question is,
Uh-huh.
uh, if you were gonna schedule a tour right now, what would be your dream spots? What would you want to hit?
Just all the comedy clubs that want me back. So I'd of course hit all the improvs and the funny bones and all that kind of stuff. But the one club I keep hearing about time and time again on all the podcasts, and just when we were up there, was the Denver Comedy Works. So I hear great things about that. I want to do some of the other improvs in Texas again, and for a full weekend. And I'd love to go back to New York because I got great responses in New York to some of my like edgier, more kind of cutting edge stuff. So I'd love to kind of go out east. And I feel like a lot of comics, they go to New York, they go out east to get good, and then they go to LA to get famous. For me, coming up in Texas and touring all over the place, I felt like, this is where I got good, and maybe go to the East Coast a little bit and get a little better. And then, but I already know, like, I have a product, I have a solid set, and I can, like I said, you can put me anywhere, and I think I'll do all right. Uh, and then go from there, seeing what people, if people can make money off of me,
That's the
agents,
dream.
managers, people like that. Yeah.
That is the dream. All right.
Yeah.
Last question here to anybody, thinking about doing comedy, starting comedy, or to the young Alex back in the day. What's one piece of advice you would give that you wish you knew back then?
Um, hmm. Uh, write every day, and then watch good comedy, watch the club headliners, watch them do more than one set and see what they do different. And see, watch people that are better than you, because iron sharpens iron. Hang out with the comics you want to be associated with. Hang out with the comics on whose shows you want to be with. Because if you're an open micer and you hang out with other open micers, you're going to be an open micer. But if you're an open micer and you hang out with comics, you're going to pick up more. You're going to absorb more. You're going to, see some stuff here and there. So hang out, with the level you want to be at. I think that'd be a good thing. And yeah, write every day. And do it for the love of comedy. If you love to make people laugh, then that's why you should do it. If you're doing it for money, then you're doing it for the wrong reason. Because if I can keep going and be comfortable and pay my bills on time, and let's say I go to 3 different comedy clubs 3 weeks out of the month. If I'm in a different comedy club every weekend, or 3 of the 4 weekends in a month, I'd be happy with that for sure.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, this moment's for you. Do you have anything you want to plug? I know you got Twitch. Anything else you got going
Yeah,
on?
check me out on Twitch. Yeah, I play video games on there, and sometimes I eat hot peppers while playing video games. So twitch.tv/Y2 Kool-Aid. Just Y2 Kool-Aid is all my social media info. And hopefully I can be at a comedy venue near you. If not, just follow me on all that social media stuff. I do a podcast with retired pro wrestler Medusa, aka Alundra Blaze. That's on the adfreeshows.com network, and that's called Medusa's Happy Hour. And we do that every other Sunday. And let's hang out. Let's talk wrestling, Ninja Turtles, nerd stuff, video games, Star Wars, and everything in between.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. Cool. Hey, again, thanks for joining me, man. Good luck
Thanks for
tonight.
having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully we do this tour thing again. It was a lot of fun. A lot of
Hell
fun.
yeah.
A lot of
Let's.
inside jokes. All right, but
So
awesome.
you had a brief bout with autism.
Yeah. I'm cured now. I'm cured.
There you go. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, awesome,
Well,
man. Thank you for being here.
thanks for
Thanks to
having me.
anybody watching this. Good night.
Oh, bye.